Okay, can I get people just to take their seats? So, listen, thanks very much for everybody's attendance here. This is our inaugural Social Care Workers Awareness Week. And I just have to go through some of the kind of announcements at the start. Just if everybody could please turn off their mobile phones. You can't all be on call today. And I know you all have important calls, but if we can just get people just to turn off their mobile phones. I'd just like to draw people's attention to the fire exits. So the exits are, there's 2 exits behind you and there's 2 exits either side the stage here. That's in case I press something here and the lights go off and something dreadful happens. But I would just like to thank Technological University of ShannonAthlone for kind of co-hosting this event for us and supporting the students to attend. It's great to see so many of you here. And I would just like to sort of, talk about the Social Care Workers Employers Forum. This is a forum that has been set up that includes statutory services delivered by Tusla Residential Children's Services and our private providers who provide necessary residential care to young people, and also the voluntary sector. So we have sort of come together as a group of people and we're working together in areas of common interests. And one of the areas that we felt was really important was to celebrate kind of residential care and the workers within residential care, and to encourage students who may be sort of starting out in the career or partways through their career to consider working in residential care. I myself, my name is Mark Smith. I've worked in residential care for my whole sort of career. I started out working in the voluntary sector and then moved over to work in kind of high support, and now I work in special care. I'm the director of special care services. And I found it to be an incredibly important task, an incredibly important role. And I absolutely feel is if you want to make a difference in young people's lives, residential care is really a way in which you can do it. You work so intensely with a group of young people and you stay with them. And to use a book that's been written kind of 30, 40 years ago at this stage, the other 23 hours, we are the people who work the other 23 hours. Everyone seems to think the glory is in that 1 hour a week with the therapist, but we are the people who work the other 23 hours. We're the people who do donkey work. And certainly my experience of working in special care is quite often we're called upon to do the individual therapeutic work. So I just can't impress upon you how much and how important it is, the residential facilities. And therefore, I think it's really important that we acknowledge our co-workers in res care. So I'd like to sort of congratulate them, and I'd like to sort of congratulate all of you, for being here. Thanks very much. So just to say is the way today is going to run is we are going to have a number of sort of speakers. Following that, we're going to have a comfort break, and then we're going to have a panel discussion, and then we're going to have an awards ceremony for a number of awards. But starting off, I'd like to call upon Dr. Don Feller, who's the Dean of Science and Health here in Athlone, to open up. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everybody, and can I welcome you very warmly to the Technological University of the Shannon on the Athlone campus. And you're very welcome to this Children's Residential Services Employers Forum as part of Social Care Workers Awareness Week. Marking Social Care Awareness Week is invaluable in highlighting the central role of social care in supporting people who find themselves in vulnerable situations. Here on the TUS Athlone campus, we have for a number of years offered programs in social care. Currently we offer 2 full-time and 1 part-time Curu-approved social care courses, the graduates of which will be the future employees and managers of services. And a number of our students and lecturers will be in attendance at today's events. It's also most welcome to have the Children's Residential and Aftercare Voluntary Association and Tusla here in Athlone to consider the role of children's residential services and the challenges facing the sector. So once again, can I warmly welcome you all, and I hope you find the programme of events both informative and thought-provoking. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that. I'd like to call on Kate, who is the CEO of Tusla, to come and open up the Awareness Week. Kate has been, I think, in the role currently now for the last year, and has been a driving force behind some of our developments. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everybody. And as I talk to you this morning, I want to also acknowledge the staff and the managers that are working today and can't be with us in person, but I hope are joining us online today from right across the country. And delighted that they're getting the opportunity to do that today. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be representing Tusla and recognising the work that is collectively being done across all of our service providers in residential care to come together as we are today in launching this first Awareness Week for social care. I'm not obviously going to pick out anybody in particular, but I do want to acknowledge just the work Rosario Mannion has taken as a member of our executive management team in bringing this together as part of our people strategy, really giving us direction as an agency to talk about how we work to better value, better support, better empower staff who are working in our services, and also staff who are working in community and voluntary, commissioned, private organisations who every day are doing their very best working with children and young people in residential care. And I reflected when Mark was talking about the therapist coming in for an hour a week. I started my career as a speech and language therapist working down in the Midwest in Limerick. And as part of that, we all know, and our training tells us as speech and language therapists, that what you can do in that 1 hour every week is so limited. It's assess, it's understand maybe the progress the child or young person has made, and then it is giving advice or giving guidance around how that can be implemented, in every interaction, and whether that's with parents, with foster parents, with staff in schools, and with staff in residential services. I know the difference that ye all make in the lives of those children and young people. And ye are not alone the therapist sometimes for those children and young people. Ye are the de facto family for those children and young people. You're the counsellor, you're the advice giver, you're all of those things. And one of the things we all know is that when a child or young person is in care, they really do need consistent adults within their lives. And for you and the work that you do, whether it's in frontline residential services, working directly with the young people, in the support services across all of, health and safety, risk, HR, finance, in management, in all of the different roles that you play, everything you do every day is making you that one consistent adult in that child's life. And it is you that is making the difference to that child and to that young person. And I know as part of this Social Care Awareness Week, we're going to hear from lots of young people who have been in care, either in foster care or in residential care, and they're going to talk about their journey. And when they talk about their journey, what they're talking about is the difference that you have made in their lives. They're talking about the positivity that you've given them, the hope that you've given them, the care that you've given them, the nurturing that you've given them. And certainly for us within Tusla, and I know across our partner agencies, we have always valued that work. We've always acknowledged it, but we mightn't have done it enough in an open way, out in public, saying very clearly, we absolutely recognise everything that you do. We absolutely appreciate and acknowledge everything you do. The social care profession is a profession that is hugely valued within our agency and across agencies. And when we have staff like you working and making such a difference. Our, I suppose, promise is to make sure that we're going to do all we can to make sure that we work with third level institutions to train more social care professionals, that we're going to recruit more social care professionals, that when we have social care professionals working within our agency, we're going to do all that we can to support you, to make sure you stay within the agency, and to make sure that you have those opportunities that you want within your career and within the social care profession. So this is the first step in publicly saying thank you, in publicly acknowledging everything you do, in publicly saying the value we place on the social care profession is absolutely enormous, and a commitment to say that we're going to continue to do more, but we're going to do it with you because you know what's going to help. You know what's going to help in terms of increasing the supply, in terms of recruiting more social care workers into children's residential services, and then in terms of supporting them to stay. And to thank you, most importantly, on behalf of the children and young people that you are looking after and caring for every day, and to thank you for all that you're doing for them and for the difference that you are making in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Before I introduce our kind of first speaker, we were considering about how we would sort of approach today, and we wanted to bring people through the kind of breadth of, you know, residential care. So we're going to listen to people's experience who are kind of students, who are kind of just out in college, who've been in the profession for a period of time, but also, you know, people who've given their whole life to kind of residential care. And I suppose, like, kind of just introducing kind of Noel Howard, there is probably no man or no person that I can think of in Ireland that has worked so long in the care service, in residential care. And I've known Noel now for, I think, 30 years, you know, and within that, Noel has been a constant sort of advocate for young people who are marginalised, young people who experience kind of residential care, but also fighting strongly for the rights and professionalisation of social care workers. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Noel Howard. There's water there now. There's water there if you need. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark, for that kind invitation. I was going to say for that kind and flattering observations about me. Thank you also for the invitation here from the organisers, and thank you particularly to Anne, who was very helpful in making sure we got to the right place and so on, and that's very important. And I was going to start off by saying that I'm a bit of a dinosaur. And then it suddenly struck me, it's a bit like being a bit pregnant. You can't be. So I am a dinosaur. I mean, I'm very far removed from the work that some of the other speakers will be talking to you about later on. But with that to say, I think perhaps some of the things that I have to say will be helpful, at least helpful. There's a gap, I think, between me and looking at all the young, fresh faces out there of people who have their lives ahead of them, the students and some of the people that I know who are not ancient by any manner of means. They're still hanging in there. There is a gap between me at this stage of my life and them. And I think that I'm a world removed from what, for example, the students of today would be involved with. You know, I have a passing acquaintance with Facebook. I'm not on Twitter, Instagram, any of those other wonderful things that have made the world what it is today for people, very helpful in many cases, in other cases not so helpful. And my choice of music is country. So you know why country music was invented? To make dysfunctional people happy. So that tells something about me. But I'm told that Taylor Swift, there is a bit of a country angle to what she does, so that doesn't put me that far away. Now, that gap between me and yourselves is not as big as the gap that there is between the child that arrives in your unit or your centre on his or her first day, because there is a huge gap. You are the adult. And with that said, you bring a certain amount of the job that you do. But when you walk in the door yourself, you bring your own life, your personality, what you've learned, what you've experienced, and sometimes your own emotional needs and so on, and your personal needs. And when you walk in the door, to a certain extent, you have to put that behind you, but it is there somewhere in that bag, as they say, you carry on your back. It's invisible, but it's there. And the child that comes in, I mean, the gap that is between the child and you is absolutely enormous, because the children who end up in residential care, as you know, and Kate to some extent adverted to it, are children who've fallen through every crack in the system. They've fallen through family, school, community, sport, everything, and they've eventually ended up with you. And it's a very, very onerous task that you face in dealing with somebody like that anyway, and it's particularly so when perhaps they are not particularly happy to be where they find themselves with you and your staff team. A description a couple of years ago of residential care was that it was like, working in residential care was like living on the San Andreas Fault in California. There were numerous minor tremors all the time, and you really never knew when the big one was going to hit. And that I think is a pretty good description. The social care work environment that you will work in, you will be challenged continually. You know, your weight, your height, your gender, everything will be challenged by the children, and they have a unique knack. It's an inbuilt ability which, if they put to good use, would make them very, very successful, and indeed some of them will become successful, despite what they might say to you or me. And that can sometimes be very, very hurtful, but I think to some extent you have to take it on the chin. And if you look at me, I had a big nose, big ears, and I wore glasses, and I was a perfect target for children, with some very descriptive adjectives thrown in for good measure. So that is something that you deal with, and as we speak, as Kate said, there are people not here today because they are doing that very, very job. And of course, there are physical challenges, and sometimes those physical challenges are disturbing, they're frightening, and on occasion can be very, very dangerous. And in 2016 and 2019, Social Care Ireland did 2 reviews into the impact of violence on social care workers. The first one was in social care in general, in residential, and then in the disability sector. And reading through that, it's very, very interesting. One of the most disturbing lines in it from a social care worker, it was almost chilling to a certain extent, but when she said that she walked into the staff room one day having experienced a colleague of hers, a woman, getting a punch, and she walked into the staff room and she said, you know, guess what's happened? And the manager happened to be there, and his response to it was, well, if she can't take a punch, she shouldn't be getting there, or shouldn't be working here, sorry. Now, social care workers are not punch bags, nobody is. And you don't go to work, or social care workers don't go to work every day to be punched. It may happen, but unless there is a very, very strong culture that is against that kind of thing, least well understood and articulated by the manager who made that remark, then we will have a huge problem. And I think it in some places that does exist. And a help in that, in dealing with that kind of thing, is obviously your training, all that stuff, but also a culture, I think, where supervision, something we've spoken about for years and years and years and years, and perhaps is not yet in place. In other words, supervision at line management level, supervision perhaps at team level, and particularly perhaps in some cases where it's needed, clinical supervision. And that does cost money, but sometimes there is a price to pay. Mark, funnily enough, mentioned the other 23 hours. It's a great book, and it says exactly what he said. You know, what happens in the other 23 hours when the therapist or the psychologist or the psychiatrist has gone away is really what matters. I mean, what they do matters too, but they simply give a certain direction and a certain understanding to the social care worker. But at the end of the day, you are there with them on the August bank holiday, Christmas Eve, Stephen's Day, and all the other times that the vast majority of people are out enjoying themselves, and rightly so. So that's extremely important, because what's demanded of the social care worker is what's demanded of any parent, and that can be something that we don't, like, social care workers are in loco parentis. that does mean something. It does give you an awesome responsibility, but it also gives you something where your professional judgment will be called into question at different times, and you have to be prepared to stand over that. If you are there in the person of a parent, well, then that does mean something and has to be acknowledged. And in a way, I suppose the social care worker is a bit of a combination, or meant to be again in different occasions, of a parent, a teacher, a psychologist, a therapist, all thrown into one at different times, the things that you have to respond to. And that can make the work extremely challenging, but it can also make it satisfactory and then sometimes give you a feeling of something that worked out very, very well. Those occasions may not be, that often, but when it does happen, it can give you a renewed sense of motivation. And sometimes I think I've met a number of people in the social care field and the allied fields, who see themselves as God's gift to children. But in a way, we are just as human as the children are, except we've managed, fortunately, in our lives to have the opportunities to get just a little bit further. And a joke oftentimes in residential care among staff is that, the children aren't too bad, it's the staff that are the problem. And I know that doesn't happen in your place, but however. And I remember working in Finglas years and years ago, and there was a psychiatrist who came in to meet the children, a man called Jerry O'Neill, a lovely man. He set up Warrenstown House many, many years ago. And I remember one day a little lad, stop me, Mark, if I go too far, because I can keep going. A little lad was standing in the corridor waiting to see him. His mother had gone in to see Jerry, and I was walking by and I said, "Oh, you're waiting to see the psychiatrist?" And no, I said, "It's a scientist I'm waiting to see." So I said, no, it's the psychiatrist, but don't worry too much about it. So when the session was over and the psychiatrist, Jerry, was going out the door, I was letting him out, and I said, "The funny thing," I said, "Jerry, that little lad just said there when he was going in to see you that he was going in to see the scientist." And in a way, you would have to know this man to know his reaction, and it was so typical of him. And he kind of looked down at the ground and he said, Noel, he said, maybe he might be just as well off seeing a scientist. And it's good to hear that. Sometimes people feel that they are so important that they can't be challenged, but it's good to hear that there is an element of just the humane that comes into things. Also, I remember an occasion when a child had vomited and somebody was cleaning it up with me, and he said, "Geez, I didn't get paid to come in here and clean up vomit, but you did." And there's nothing wrong with cleaning up vomit. There's nothing wrong with the basic care that is given by social care workers. It's monotonous. Your name won't be up in lights. But as every good parent does, that's what being there means, that you do the things that have to be done, and they won't all be highfalutin things. Also, I think we can read things very, very wrongly sometimes, and sometimes where you feel you're never succeeding, that is the battle, it's like banging your head off a brick wall, that you don't know sometimes what the result will be. And I remember a boy coming into a place where I worked towards the end of my career, and I remember him specifically because he was very bright, quite intelligent, and he was the first boy that I ever saw coming into a residential centre with a book. He'd one of the Harry Potter books, so he was well able to read and write. But he broke everybody's heart, including his own, I suppose. And he was a very, very difficult child to manage. And he ran away, the cops would bring him back, all that kind of thing. He was very bright and intelligent, but he was thrown out of class very often. So he became a child that was unmanageable in a centre where there were quite a few children. So inevitably, and you'll be familiar with some of this, as it happens, there had to come a time when he had to be moved on. And to everybody, he was a problem. In fact, he was a huge problem. And the day he was leaving, he was in the reception area of the centre, and he was saying goodbye to the psychologist, and he kind of looked around, and literally with tears running down his face, he said, "This has been the place that I have been the happiest in all of my life." And nobody would believe that. No inspection would pick that up, because any inspection service that would come in, or the management, or the team leader, or the worker would see that this boy was a problem. But it was remarkable that despite all the difficulties he caused for everybody else, and indeed for himself, he was able to say that he was happiest here. So we never know. You just never know. And because things can take us by surprise. The great baseball player Joe DiMaggio, who played for the New York Yankees and was married to Marilyn Monroe. And when he retired, he did an interview, and he was asked, you know, what has been the greatest thing that baseball has given you? And everybody expected him to say, you know, when we won the World Series, as it's called in America, the equivalent of the All-Ireland final, or, you know, a home run that I scored. And he paused and he thought, and he said, the greatest thing baseball has given me is that I was mentioned in The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. And there is a line in it where the old man out in the boat says, I wish I had fished with the great DiMaggio. So the expectation was completely different. I think Eric Cantona in that movie about him said that his greatest thrill wasn't a goal that he scored, it was a pass that he gave to somebody. So you just never know. Our observations sometimes and our interpretations of things can be way, way off, as in the case of that young lad I spoke about, and of Joe DiMaggio and Eric Cantona. A couple of years ago, it's quite a few years now, I remember at something where the Minister for Children said, you know, what was wanted in this country was a world-class care system. And I don't agree with that, and I don't believe it. We don't need a world-class care system or social care system. We need a good, efficient, effective one. I know world-class is used in lots of ways, but I think that's what we need, and sometimes maybe the sights we set are a bit too high. In the Ryan report, 5 volumes of it, harrowing to read, but in the introduction there is a line which says that in the industrial and reformatory schools that had been looked at and examined and gone into in detail, one of the things that would have helped would have been, the line was, I may be paraphrasing now, that a little humanity would have gone a long way to make the lives of those children a bit better. Not huge therapeutic interventions, not psychiatrists coming in droves, but a little humanity. And the big thing, I think, for social care workers is if you can show that, if the social care worker can show that and demonstrate it, I think that may make all the difference. And indeed, when the child leaves, the fact that they've got the care that they should have got, it may not always have been apparent and it may be thrown back in one's face now and then, but being cared for is one of the things, I suppose. It's one of the loveliest lines. I mean, somebody saying in a movie or in a book, you know, you cared for me, is one of the loveliest lines I think that you can write, and one of the loveliest things you can hear, whether it's a partner, whether it's a child saying to it, but it's wonderful. And really social care workers are there just to do that, to care. And that's very important. Your training, vitally important, but it is the icing on the cake. If you are not, or I am not the kind of person that is able to rise to the challenge, be the kind of person who can work with difficult children, all the training in the world won't change that. And I have seen examples of that, and I'm sure many of you have too. In 2008, if you remember, when the plane was brought down into Hudson by that Captain Sullenberg, I think was his name, he said, when he realized that this was serious, he said he had the most sickening pit of your stomach falling through the seat feeling. And I think that's when people can identify in residential care where things really get tough. But he said one of the ways of looking at this might be that for 42 years, I've been making small, regular deposits in this bank of experience, education, and training. And on January 15th, the balance was sufficient so that I could make a very large withdrawal. And I think it's a very, very, very good line. And your education, your training, keep going back to it. Be a lifelong learner. Keep doing stuff. It's difficult if you work in residential care. When you come home at 11 or 12 o'clock at night or after a night shift or whatever, it's very hard and difficult to work up the enthusiasm. But if you can do it, it will be enormously helpful. A book I would recommend is a long book, and students and so on have enough books to read. But there was a novel written in 2015 called A Little Life. They've made a movie out of it. And interestingly, it's about care. It's about care in the basic sense. It's about 4 men, 4 friends. One is an actor. One is an architect, one is an artist, and one is a lawyer. And they're far removed from the type of children and their circumstances that social care workers would deal with. They were extremely rich, extremely successful, but one of them had had a terrible childhood, and the other 3 were there, and that it's worked in over the course of the book. The other 3 were there as carers, really, and they were often on alert. It was almost like being on call. One would ring the other and say, we have to go and find him. But despite the care, despite being there as much as they could for him, and without giving the ending of the book away, sometimes your best work, you know, the blood, sweat and tears that you put into it just may not be enough. And I suppose the competent social care worker is able to put that in perspective, that sometimes despite the best things that you do, you know, it would all seem as if it's for naught. But perhaps it's not, as in the case of the young lad that I mentioned, when everything everybody did seemed not to be succeeding but failing. But to him, people were there for him, and that's very important. I think, Mark, that's nearly it. Here in Athlone, I just finished with this, here in Athlone about maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was a social care conference, and there was a speaker called Charles Sharp. He wrote what would be a blog now, I suppose, but he had a newsletter called Good Enough Caring. And again, it was the idea, not perfect caring, but just good enough. And he gave an example of when he was with a group of children that were taken away to Wales for the summer for 2 weeks, and there were 5 or 6 staff went with him, and the staff had different assignments, and his assignment was to get up a half an hour before everybody else and to make the breakfast, get it ready. So he did that the first morning, and as he was doing it, he heard these pitter-patter steps coming down the stairs. One of the young boys, one of the young lads, who happened to be from Ireland, as he said, came down, and Charles said, no, it's too early. You get up, go back to bed. No, we'll call you in 20 minutes. And he said, I'll give you a hand, and so on. So Charles felt the best thing to do was to go with it, and he gave him a hand. And he said they worked out this game called the Irish Sleep Stakes. Now, many of you are too young to remember the Irish Sweepstakes, the lottery by another name, many, many years ago. But so they called this the Irish Sleep Stakes, and what they did was they kept a book on who would be down first, which staff member or which boy would be down first, and they had a bet on it. And it worked very well. They kept it going for a fortnight, and they went back, completely forgot about it. And about 20 years later, Charles was walking down a street in London, and he was walking to get a train, and he heard a whistle. And he looked around, there was a building site, and there was this man on the building site, and he was beckoning him. And he realised as he went towards him that he was the lad that we were talking about. And it had a great chat, delighted to see each other and all that kind of thing. And as Charles was going, because he was going to get the train, as he was going away, the young lad said to him, he says, will you ever forget the Irish Sleep Stakes? And it, again, something that Charles had forgotten completely about. And I suppose that's the point I'm making, just being there, doing the things that you do, and you never know when you make a difference. And in that case, that was a fantastic difference to make, and a lovely story as well. Thank you very much.
Noel, just thanks very much again. The observations over the years are so insightful and so kind of useful. We're just going to move on now. I think we have Teresa Brown from Athlone, and Teresa has extensive experience, a doctorate in childhood studies from Queen's University, and Teresa's bringing up one of our current, Caitlin, one of our current students.
Firstly, how do poor Caitlin and I follow Kate and follow Noel? We just feel we're coming in maybe through a different lens. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Residential Service Employers Forum for inviting the Department of Social Science to be part of this big week today. We feel very privileged that we're included on the journey, as the kind of aim of this week is to shine a light on residential social care workers. So I'm just going to give a little overview of our programmes here in TUS Midlands, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about our practice modules particularly placement prep. And Caitlin then is going to give an account of her experience as a social care student in residential care. So we have 3 programs here in TUS Midlands. We have a level 7, level 8, and we have a part-time degree. And each of those programs, what's unique about our programs now, and like all other technological universities, is our programs have each an appointed program director whose background, who are academics with backgrounds in social care, who have vast experience in social care, and some of us with experience in residential care. And we have very supportive pathways into these programs. There's through the CAO, and we also then, for our part-time programs here, it's an application to the university. But if anyone is interested, they can ring or contact, email any of us, because we want to support adult learners and students onto our programs. And I know I'm speaking on behalf of other technological universities in the countries as well, to ensure that we are responding to the need of the sector to have social care workers qualified. As our Dean had said earlier, our programs are all CORU approved. And within then, when students come into the college, we have a very strong support network. And I think the nature of our programs, because we have backgrounds in social care, we are academics, but we are academics with a nurturing social care approach. We adopt a very student-centred approach. And one of the most recent positive developments that we're very proud of is a partnership with Tusla, where we have Christina Parkinson with our support services and one of our programme directors, Mary McHugh, who are running a programme called Quorum. And this programme is where we appoint 3rd and 4th year students to support students that have care experiences that are coming onto our programmes. And that's up and running for 1 year, and it's been very successful. We also have very much a multidisciplinary approach to modules, in that we have psychology lectures, sociology, law, creative studies, and all the lecturers on those modules are experts in their field. And the practice modules then that we have, again reflecting all the other programs in the technological universities, the placement prep, they are designed and delivered by academics with social care background and social care qualification. And to ensure that we are responding all the time to the change in landscape in residential care, we draw on research, we draw on contributions from guest speakers. We are all members of the Irish Association of Social Care Educators and Social Care Ireland. And we also have very clear mechanisms at the moment in our infrastructure for feedback from service users and for placement providers. In 1970, when the first childcare course, I'm not showing my age, I wasn't around for it, but the first childcare course in 1970, Pat Brennan set that up, and it was the first course for residential workers. And I know Noel, I won't say you were around at that time, Noel, you were engaged with the programme at that time. But the aim that Pat Brennan said in 1970 was the only tool the residential worker had was the self. And so many years on here in TUS Midlands and Midwest, that is what we focus on in our practice modules. And I think Noel and Kate alluded to that. The academic is really important, but we work on ensuring the students understand that residential care is about doing the ordinary to create the extraordinary. So explaining to students, sitting down, having a cup of tea and 4 Marietta biscuits for 3 hours is magic. You're building a relationship. We don't have to be doing. And the whole issue then around hanging in, that is so important, particularly, as Noel alluded to, we're working with young people where systems, big cracks in the systems have let them down. And it's just lovely to hear Kate saying that the profession has been acknowledged for sometimes wiping up the breakdowns of other systems and taking that on board from young people at 14 and 15. And I have worked in that area where young people come in very hurt from other systems, but it's the residential worker at 3 o'clock in the morning that has to take that on. It's projected onto them. So again, to thank Kate to hear that. I was quite moved this morning that it's an open acknowledgement of a profession that has worked silently during COVID, that has been undervalued for a number of years. And I think this is the start of a kind of a culture of recognition. And we as academics, we want to be part of that culture of recognition, and we want to get on that bandwagon. So if there's any way we can help for residential social care workers in devising modules or doing postgrad, we are all open to that. And I know I speak on behalf of other technological universities. And just finally, one key message we want to, in the Technological University here today to note is a big thank you to all the practice educators and managements that take our students on placement. We acknowledge how difficult that is, and something Noel said, it's not, you don't get any rewards either in inspectorate reports for doing it, but we know taking on students is a lot more challenging than it was 3 years ago because of the bureaucratic demands, because you have to attend our training, you have to facilitate our three-way meetings. But the difference students experience when they go on placement in residential care and the difference we see when they come back, we even notice, and Caitlin will talk more about, they sit in a different place in the classroom after doing a residential placement. They have an appetite for knowledge. They question you more. They become advocates. You know, the way young people in care are sometimes given a very negative press. The student speaks up now because they have been at the coalface. They have seen the trials and the tribulations of all that happens. So again, thank you very much for that. And just on a last point before I hand you over to Caitlin, in 2016 I did some research on residential workers' views of effective basic relationship-based practice. And the key theme that emerged from that study was perseverance, was residential workers just hanging in all the time when, you know, Noel alluded to those reports around verbal and physical violence, hanging in when young people were so closed up. And that hanging in is something, I think, perseverance, we need to talk more about. That it's I don't know whether a gift is too much of a spiritual thing to say, but I think that culture of recognition for perseverance needs to be written about and talked about. And that's what we're doing at the moment in our placement prep modules. We're talking about, what do you need to persevere? You need self-care. And that's what we're focusing a lot. Caring for yourselves and caring for people you work with. So hopefully that's what will come out of this new culture of recognition, resources that we give to workers where they can care for themselves, whatever that looks like. So I'm going to hand you over to Caitlin, and Caitlin will introduce herself and talk about her work placement experience.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Hello everyone, I'm Caitlin Duffy and I'm a fourth year social care student at the Technological University Shannon Midlands. So today I'm going to speak to you about my experience as a student on placement. I carried out my third year placement in residential care. It was a 15-week placement from September to December last year. So I suppose before going on placement, I would have engaged in my placement preparation module, and that was a 100% attendance module. And I suppose that module gave me a sense of what is expected of me as a student on placement, and, you know, going out in the workforce, what placement might look like. The placement office as well was very helpful. So I would have informed the placement office of the organisation that I was interested in completing my placement with, and they were able to get me in contact with the organisation and organise interviews. So I suppose only for them, I probably would never have got the placement I wanted to. Before going on placement then, I suppose my first day I was very nervous and apprehensive because it was all new to me, especially residential care. And I suppose going in, the main thing for me was building the relationships with the young people. And I suppose going into placement, I didn't realise, you know, how long that relationship building can take. I suppose I went in expecting, you know, the young people to take to me straight away and that would be great, but that wasn't the case. So, but I stuck with it. I put up my boundaries when I first went in on placement. I maintained those and I just remained consistent with the young people. And I think it was about 2 weeks into my placement and I was really reconsidering. I was like, God, like, how am I going to do another 13 weeks of this? The young people weren't engaging, but it just took one simple activity where myself and the young person got a chance to go out into Athlone and spend some of their clothing budget. And from there, our relationship just formed. And it's just something as simple as that there. So from there, then me and that young person went on to get a really good relationship, and it just grew and grew and grew throughout the weeks. I suppose I received a lot of support as well from my supervisor on placement, and each student is given an academic mentor from the college, and they come out and visit you several times on placement and do check-ins. So, the support I received from my supervisor and my academic mentor really, really helped me throughout my placement, especially with the whole self-care aspect. We always talk about in college how important self-care is, but going on placement and working in residential yourself, you really do see the importance of self-care. So I suppose for myself, I would enjoy the gym, I might go for a walk, and I would always leave anything that happens at placement, in placement or at work, because it's very hard, like whenever you bring that home with you, I wouldn't be discussing it at home, because it's just, for me anyway, it wasn't really healthy for me. So I suppose I'll bring you through a typical day in placement for me then. Was you went on shift in the morning and you brought some of the young people to school, so a staff member drove and you were in the car. Then you might come back to the house, we'll do a wee bit of paperwork, cleaning might have to be done. The young people then would be collected from school or youth reach either. We had some service users in youth reach. And then they might have activities planned in the afternoon. They might have appointments to go to, so you'd attend those with them. And all of the young people might want to watch a movie with you in the afternoon. I also got the opportunity to experience family access visits, which was like an amazing experience for me, because I'd never experienced anything like that there before. To see how that works was really, really good experience. And I suppose my favourite memory of placement was on my last day, where there was two young people in particular that I would have got on with very well, and they wanted to go to the cinema with me. So we went off to the cinema, and then we came back to the service, and the young people had got a Chinese, and we all sat in the sitting room. And I think my shift was supposed to finish at around 7:30, and the young people just didn't want me to leave the house. So I ended up staying, I think, till about 9 o'clock. And I just sat with the young people, talking to them. And even on my last day, the young people, they really opened up to me even a lot more of their own experiences and what they experienced whenever they were younger. So that whole relationship piece, that feeling is just an amazing feeling, that you're doing something for these kids and they're able to confide in you and you're creating a safe space for them. I then went on to get offered a part-time position from that placement, which I was delighted about. So from there, I've got training opportunities. I've got to complete my therapeutic crisis intervention training, which is an amazing training module for social care practitioners, and it's taught me so much and really, really helped me in my development throughout my practice. I've received first aid training, medication management. I've done loads of online courses, different adverse childhood experiences. All of these are trainings that I never would have experienced had I not completed placement in residential care. I suppose coming from placement, then coming back into the college setting, I was a lot more confident as an individual, and I could engage in my modules a lot easier. Our lecturers, whatever they were speaking about, I was able to understand, and I was able to just be more engaging, because I just found I had so much experience already from placement and then getting a job that, whenever I do finish my degree, I already have a certain amount of experience, and I'll have no problem then working in the field. So it really, really does stand to you as an individual and a practitioner. It's also a great feeling to be able to create a great safe space for these young people. So my psychology modules in college would have really helped me gain an understanding of our young person's pain-based behaviours and what's going on for them and how to cope with that. And your TCI training is brilliant for that there as well. My law modules as well in college, all that learning really helped me even on placement, understand the legal aspect of social care. And these are all things that, the college are teaching you the whole time, and it's just amazing. I'm also very grateful, I suppose, to the young people for shaping me as a practitioner. We're not only role modelling these young people, but they're also teaching us a lot about ourselves too, and we're constantly growing and learning. And, I suppose if it wasn't for those young people and the relationship I have with those, I wouldn't be the practitioner, that I am today. I feel like the negative portrayal of residential care in the media paints a very unfair picture, and overshadows the positive work the social care practitioners carry out daily, and it often stigmatises our young people living in these settings who already feel isolated, You know, at the end of the day, these services are young people's homes. This is where they spend most of their days, you know, where they do all of their activities, meet their friends. So I think it's very important. I know the service I'm working with, like, we have a very much a home environment for our young people, you know, so we'd all be very inclusive. We'd all have, now it's an ideal world, but we actually do sit down, have dinner together. It's brilliant, you know, the kids will all be up in the morning for school. They engage very well with staff, you know. Then some young kids might need, you know, that more one-to-one time, even bedtime routines. You know, you might spend that one-to-one time with a young person for bedtime. So it's just creating that home environment as important for these young people. And I suppose, you know, that's something that's often forgotten about, you know, that these are young people that have come from traumatic backgrounds, and the relationships that you build with them are so important and vital for those, not just for us. So I would encourage more students to consider doing a placement in residential care. Residential care, look, it does have its tough days. I don't think there's any sector of social care that's, you know, easy, but there is more positive days than bad. And even if you have an incident with a young person, you know, that incident might go on for a couple of minutes, and that's just a couple of minutes out of a full 12-hour shift for you. You know, it just, I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on the negativity of residential care, but, you know, you get so much more positives out of it. It is an amazing way to gain experience as well, so that's why I would really encourage, like, students, you know, going on placement, do your placement residential. I've got opportunity to be on a key working team as well, which is just amazing for me. Like, you know, so key working is, for anyone that doesn't know, each month, you know, you'll do up a key working planner for your young people, and it might be whether the young people struggles with personal hygiene, maybe managing friendships, maybe they're struggling managing their mobile phone, social media. So you'll carry out a key work. It can be formal, informal. You can bring practical aspects into it as well with these young people. So you're constantly role modelling for them and teaching them. And then you do report writing, and then every month, you know, their documents and their files are updated. So that's all experience that I never would have got only for working in residential care. So I definitely would encourage students to complete placements in residential. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. I suppose it is sort of certainly for people who are online watching us, or students who are here, like residential care, it is a fantastic sort of grounding experience, and it's great to be sort of brought through by Caitlin about how much experience she would have gained in there. We're just kind of moving on, and I'm going to invite sort of Casey to come up. Casey is a recent graduate, so a bit like Caitlin, she will bring us through kind of, you know, the difference of starting off and also establishing herself within the staff team. Noeline?
Thank you very much, Mark. Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me today. I'm just waiting on this PowerPoint. It's only short, so I'm only going to go, the first 2 pages kind of are the start of my journey in residential and a bit of college, but Caitlin obviously went into great detail there, and I don't need to repeat myself, and it sounds very similar to her experience in residential. Brilliant, thanks very much. I suppose, yeah, so I studied in TUD out in Grange Gorman, so it's a technological university like here. And the same as Caitlin, her experience, my tutors and everything were so supportive. We had a great, like, preparing us for placement, and everything was brilliant. But it was only a 3-year level 8 degree, so we had 3 placements. So my first one was in a residential service for young people with intellectual disabilities, and then my second one was an advocacy and empowering group for members of the travelling community, and then my third one was in Smiley's Trust Services, and that's where I still am working. I suppose, so all in total, I've about 4 years residential experience, both in disability and in mainstream. So I'll just go briefly into this. As I said, Caitlin did an excellent job there at explaining all this. But yeah, so when I went into Smiley's has 2 houses, Racefield House and Glen Silva. So I did my placement in Racefield, and I was there for about 5 or 6 months. And I had to do my portfolio and all my college bits and stuff like that. And then I had a great supervisor, Yaz, she was brilliant, and excellent supervision. And supervision, I think, is so important as a student, particularly going into placement. Because going into residential, I think my fear was that the young people would go, like, sure, you look about 12, like, what do you know, kind of thing. And I was like, oh God, like, how am I going to be able to talk to these people and stuff? But my supervision was brilliant, and it was not like that at all. So if anyone's thinking that, that's just not true. The young people were lovely in that house, and I got on great with them. I suppose as well, what's important when you're in residential is having a supportive team. Both teams in Glensilva and Smiley's, half of them have been there for like 15 plus years, so they've so much experience and we've so much to learn from them. And then we've got the other half that are kind of newer, and they bring like fresh ideas to the team, and it's brilliant, like having, perfect for a student going in to having experienced people and people newer, and as well working there. So having a supportive team, I'd say, was brilliant, and in Racefield it was brilliant. And then as well, I suppose, feeling part of the team is really important as well when you're a student, and like participating in team meetings and not being afraid to speak up. And I suppose if you're in a supportive environment, like, you're well able to do that, and people will acknowledge you and stuff like that. And that was definitely my experience. And yeah, I definitely felt like what I had to say was important, which is good as a student, because you don't want to go in somewhere and feel like, you know, you're not as important as the staff team. So that was really good. And then as well, we had consultation sessions. So they still go on. As a student, you can go in. So we have 2 consultation sessions in Smiley's, they provide them. And one is for where you present the young person, not like physically, you paint a picture of the young person and what they're going through. And the consultant will kind of give you ideas, or maybe speak about what's happening from their point of view and stuff like that, which is really good, because sometimes as a team you can feel like you're trying to do everything, and then an outside person will come in and go, have you tried this, or maybe this, and it just kind of gives you a new lease of life, like when you're working with the young person. And then as well, we have another facilitator that comes in, and this one I think is really beneficial, and it's really, really good for social care workers. She comes in and speaks to us, and we all sit down as a team, and it happens once a month, and we can speak of anything that we're holding, like for the young person, or something that might be affecting us in work, and we're able to kind of trash it out in the room, or other people might feel the same. So it's a really good way, and she facilitates it and kind of says, well, why do you think that's that feeling for you? Everything's gone back to like the unconscious and stuff like that in our job, and it's really, really beneficial, I have to say. So I suppose then, after my placement, Helen came over into Racefield, and she nabbed me, and she said, would you like to come over? There was vacancies in Glensilva at the time, so I said, yeah, like, I'd love to. I loved, when I was in placement a couple of weeks, I knew I loved residential care. I loved working in that environment. So I went over to Glensilva, and I had to do, obviously, my interview and the whole recruitment process, and your Garda vetting and stuff like that. And then, thankfully, I got the job. And I suppose Smiley's works as a therapeutic community. There's a lot in this, but the best way to describe it, I think, is to have a safe space, supportive safe space for the young person to be able to be vulnerable. And it's very hard for anyone to be vulnerable, let alone a young person that's been through a lot and has fallen through the system so many times. So vulnerabilities can come out in anger, can come out in anxiety, can come out in avoidance, can come out in so many different ways. But as long as the young person knows that they're in a safe space where they can express this, and we're going to support them and we're going to accept them no matter what they come to us with. And I think that's, like, therapeutic community is based off on, like, a lot of humanistic, positive regard and psychodynamic principles. So, yeah, I think that's really important. And to note as well that, like, coming on to building therapeutic relationships, like, as Caitlin said, building relationships with young people can be hard, and it does involve a lot of hanging in there, waiting, and that doesn't look like sitting there and going, are you ready? Are you ready to enter into this relationship? That's not the way it looks. I suppose it's taking opportunity-led, like, work, and maybe it is going out for a drive, going out shopping for the clothes, going and watching a movie with them, doing homework with them. Stuff like that does build relationships for young people, and it is the building blocks, and that does take time, but, like, you will get there, and it's a great feeling as a social care worker when you know that a young person is learning to trust you and they're starting to enter into this relationship. It's very fulfilling. And I suppose when you're there for, as Mark was saying, the other 23 hours, like, you have a lot of time to do that as well. So don't feel like if a young person is avoiding you a little bit, that's just them putting up their safe space and saying, no, like, do you know, too many people have let me down now, so you're not coming in again. So don't feel like if you're being pushed off, like, it's not, just hang in there, as everyone was saying. I suppose then having a good supportive team, like, that includes your management as well. We have brilliant supervision, as I said, it's very important to, like, process your stuff in supervision and continue to be professional on the floor, because it is a lot. We're dealing with very traumatised children, and I suppose that can have a toll on people, it can, so there's no point in saying it doesn't. But like having your important supervision and being able to say what you feel like is very important as well. And just not to forget as well that these young people have probably been hurt through their relationships, and a lot of them have fractured and broken relationships. So to ask them to enter into a relationship with you is a big deal for them. It's not just like making a friend in the schoolyard. So just to keep that in mind as well, that like it is a big step for them. So to make sure that you do nurture that relationship when you get it, because it can be broken just as quickly. And then I suppose for me, I love working in a varied and dynamic environment. I love going into work and knowing that not one day is going to be the same. Now for the young people, they'd say, okay, see, like every day, like we're getting up, we're going to school. And I'm like, yeah, that's brilliant. But for staff members, obviously we know there's loads of stuff that goes behind the scenes that they don't know half of about, whether it's going to shopping, whether it's having to go put the receipts down, or there's something like that. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background, and that's what keeps it interesting and motivated and exciting. Or maybe it might be bringing a young person to appointment, or it could be going down to shop with a young person. Like there's loads of different things, I suppose, that make each day different. And I really like that about residential care. And then multidisciplinary and interagency work. I think this is really important for us as professionals to make sure that we are at them meetings and we are the people that are with them for the 23 hours. We know, especially when you're key working, you know your child inside and out if you've been doing it for a long time. And it's really important for us and for the young person to know that there's someone there that will stand for them, that has been with them and knows what they're getting up and what they're having for the breakfast in the morning, and whether they like this type of clothing or they like this type of clothing. Like we have a young person and you have to pack the bag when he goes on access, and like if you don't pick the right clothes, like, you know, and someone else might come in and not know what the clothes are that only see him once a week. So I think that being able to stand up at those meetings and being able to speak for the young person and advocate for them is like really, really important. And as well for our professional growth, like we don't want to underestimate ourselves either. Like we are there for most of the young persons, like hopefully for a lot of their lives. They're in there for long-term, hopefully, placements. And then I suppose for professional and personal growth, and Caitlin touched a little bit on this, as a professional, I suppose you're learning all the time. You're learning new skills in residential. You're constantly being met with challenges. But if you, like I went in on my first day and if something happened, I would have been like, oh God, how am I ever going to learn how to manage this? But then after a couple of weeks, you don't think about it twice. You know exactly how to manage it. And you're constantly learning new things all the time. And then personally as well, like we're constantly talking about young people and their relationships and their breakdowns and triggers and all this. But you learn that about yourself when you're working with young people. And that is really important to be self-aware as well in residential. Because as Noel said, they can say things to you and you have to let it go over your head, but some things can be upsetting. So just to be self-aware about that and to learn to, like, you know, to process those things in supervision and be able to move on, because, you know, a lot of that is just inner stuff that they're kind of projecting on you. I suppose, yeah, that's it. I kind of flew through that. Sorry, Mark.
Thanks very much, Casey. We're just going to bring, Anthony Eames up. Anthony describes himself as a seasoned practitioner, so he's bringing the experience on further. He holds a degree in social care and he's currently studying the MA in social care leadership and management. And he's a significant interest in, working with young people and ensuring that they're at the heart of all the decisions in the work and recognising the complexities faced. Thanks very much, Anthony.
So, thanks very much for inviting me here today. As has been said already, my name is Anthony Eames. I'm a manager with Don Bosco Care, working in the Drumcondra House. I'm just going to give a little background about my own sort of experience working in residential care so far. So, I'm 8 years currently as a social care manager. 3 years currently in Drumcondra, which will be the service that provides placements for young people aged 12 to 17. Currently we have 4 beds and currently we have 4 young people living with us. Previously I would have spent 5 years managing our semi-independent service, which is for 17 to 19-year-olds in Blessington Street. That's a service where young people who may need that extra little bit of sort of support from a sort of full residential team can come and they can transition into aftercare. Overall, I've about 20 years experience, like so many people in the room. I started in Don Bosco as a placement on my second year, and they couldn't get rid of me after that. I have a bit of experience working on disabilities too, and that's also something that would still be an interest of mine too as well, particularly in terms of advocacy and empowerment for people with disabilities. So I just want to talk a little bit about sort of a couple of sort of guiding principles or statements that I sort of kept with me through my career coming into it. So I suppose it's a popular enough term. I think it's mostly sort of kept contemporary by people like Tom Garfitt and stuff like that. It is in the context of a relationship of safety that young people will explore new ways of being. And to me, what that means is that our young people come to us with behaviours that they have learned to survive, to stay alive, to keep themselves being able to be with you in this current day. What happens for a lot of our young people when they come to us is that the behaviours that they've acquired and the survival mechanisms and so on and the coping mechanisms that they need to have don't serve them anymore. They come into our environments, and now that behaviour, if it is shoplifting, if it is sort of being the tough guy on the street, if it is sort of other behaviours that sort of keep themselves safe in the environments that they come from, they no longer serve themselves well when they're in an environment when we're sort of saying, well, you don't need to do that because we're here trying to meet your needs. And again, like that, it's one of the mottos of Don Bosco. It's not enough for the young people to sort of know that they're loved. It's not enough for them to love them people. They must know it, as in they must experience it, that there's people here who genuinely want to care for them, that genuinely are interested in them, genuinely interested in their well-being. Where this all comes together as well as another sort of guiding principle for myself is in social care, a big motivating factor for me is social justice. It is the sort of advocacy and the sort of the pushing the agenda of the people left on the margins of our society. And I think it's, without sort of much argument, we can agree that young people in residential care are among the most vulnerable, most marginalised young people in our society. The statistics are not great. It's something that we work really hard to avoid. The difficulties we know our young people face in education, in housing, in their relationships, and just being part of community. So for me, working in residential care has been a really fundamental way that I can sort of get in and sort of promote the ideals of social justice in trying to help young people to break the cycle. Again, it's a quick definition of social care here, which I'm sure particularly all the students are well familiar with at this stage too as well. But really what this comes down to is that I believe our task as social workers in residential care, social care workers, is to try to help young people to break the cycles, to sort of change the narrative, change the theme, change the direction in which their lives come from. So often, as we sort of know, there's an old cliche, the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why you were born. And after that, a lot of your story is already written for you, unfortunately. For a lot of our young people, sort of the pain, the trauma, the sort of broken attachments, the sort of separation, the isolation, all this sort of stuff, all these things that they have to carry with them, as well as having the task of being a young person trying to get through the challenges that any child has to get through, give us an enormous task. So why do we do it? How do we say in it? Well, I've managed to stay in the work for this long for a couple of reasons. A big thing for me is seeing the progress. Again, learning to manage our sort of expectations about what's achievable for a young person, setting the bar. Young people will come to us, and while the path for them mightn't be to go on to become a solicitor or a barrister, their path might be to go on to be a parent that is able to function in a relationship that was different to their own experience, which to me is an enormous outcome. We hear stories from our ex-residents. I'm lucky in Don Bosco Care that we've been around for a while and we're still in the same place. So young people can come back to us and tell us their stories. They can tell us about their weddings. They can tell us about their children. They can tell us about, you know, I really get what you were trying to say to me at that time. When you were having that argument with me, when you were disagreeing with me, when you wouldn't give me what I want, you really pissed me off at that time. But I see why you were trying to do it now. One of the best examples I have of a young person coming back and talking to us, he said, do you know what? What you've really got right is you gave me what I needed, not what I wanted. And our task in this sort of work so often is, again, trying to meet these young people's needs, bring them into relationship. And this job is made so incredibly difficult because, as has been mentioned by a lot of my colleagues already, these are young people who have been really hurt from the very beginning by the relationships that were supposed to keep them safe. And a real sign sometimes in our work that we're actually making progress is when the behaviours of the young people actually worsen. This is a sign that young people are really getting nervous, they're getting anxious, they're going to test you, you're going to be just another young person, you're just going to be another adult that when the going gets tough, you're going to turn around and say, well, I can't do this, you're too difficult to be around, you're too challenging, and unfortunately, you're going to have to go. And sometimes that does happen. But as the story from Noel has told us, even in those sort of places where we think we weren't able to do enough and we're going to fail, there could actually be huge success. We are building on the small wins, again, as the previous speakers have said. The themes in our young people's lives is that they can't see things through. They can't have consistency. That hasn't been given to them. They don't have that sort of template and framework to bring it into new relationships. When they feel like someone's getting close, when they feel like someone's starting to really get to know them, all those defense mechanisms stream have come up around sort of saying, no, I'm going to be rejected here, I'm going to be hurt again, it's better I get the first move in. Our task as social care workers, and my task now as manager, is to support a team to survive those challenging times. And a lot of the times in our work in social care, particularly in residential care, your only job is to survive it. Your first task is to keep yourself safe, is to mind yourself safe, because if you can't mind yourself, if you can't take care of yourself, you don't really have the credibility to go and say, I can take care of someone else. After that, when you've got that bit left over, when you're sort of clear in the systems of your workplace, you can start to think about the sort of extra creative parts of the work that might be the breakthrough in a sort of situation. And breakthroughs come in all shapes and sizes. It can be that young person agreeing and going, do you know what, I will go and get my hair cut today. I will sort of let you cut my toenails. I will let you come to the meeting with me in school. Maybe tiny things as well, but could be fundamental in shifting what's going on. So how we do the work, being supported by management, how we're held in our organisation, and that starts at the top. And that starts outside of the organisations in many cases. It starts working with the other stakeholders in young people's lives. Tusla, the Department of Education, schools, all the other professionals that come together and have the well-being of the young person at heart. When the challenging times coming together, agreeing what is the priority, what do we need to do here, what is achievable, being realistic, setting about and doing the work. Again, as I sort of said, a key sort of thing, perseverance was a word that was used earlier, survival is another one as well, because what we have learned over the course of our work is that when these young people challenge you, if you can stay with it, if you can survive the behaviours that they will bring, they will settle down. They will sort of get into a routine. They will be able to start to attend school in a way that maybe they never did before, continue to go to soccer, GAA training, go to the art class, go to drama, have the self-esteem inside of them to not only sort of just get through their day-to-day, but start to do what we want with all our children and start to thrive and explore life in a safe way. So, again, as I sort of said, our work, it's rarely perfect, but then who of us are? Teenagers, they rarely do what they're supposed to do, but then those who of us did. The gift that we can give these young people, and I do believe it is a gift, is that we keep ourselves well enough and we're supported in the work by the many ways that the fellow speakers have spoke about and others as well, to keep put their hand up and sort of saying, we'll go again today, we'll try again today, we're not going to give up today. Thanks very much, folks.
Thanks very much, Anthony. We're just going to call on our final speaker. I'd like to introduce Olwen. Olwen is a clinical nurse manager in the disability sector, and she currently sits as a leaver on the Tusla Foster Care Committee. Thanks very much.
Hi, how's it going? Good morning. My name's Olwen. I'm 29 years old now. I would have left residential care maybe 10 years ago now, I'd say. I lived in foster care from the age of 8 before moving into residential care when I was 17. Initially, when I found out I was moving into a residential home, I was really scared because I'd only heard negative things about residential services in general. If I'm honest, I thought everyone was going to be offering me drugs, all my belongings were going to be robbed, and it was going to be manic constantly in the house. I also had an impression that it would be really dirty and not homely-like. The impression I had was mainly from TV shows where it looked like dorms, and I expected staff to be really formal. I also thought there was going to be a lot more people living there. At that point, I hadn't thought much about what the relationship with staff would be like or how they would support me. I was more dreading the place and worried about what the other people living there were going to be like. It didn't cross my mind that I would develop a relationship with staff and grow to be so fond of them. When I first met with staff, I was actually really surprised at how staff treated me. They were so nice and welcoming. On my first day too, the staff had brought me out shopping to set up my bedroom in a way that suited me and asked me what meals I liked for the grocery shop and helped me set up my bedroom. They made loads of care and gestures when I moved in. All these things made me feel more comfortable in the house. I was actually really surprised at the time. I thought it was all for show and that things would change once I fully moved in. As time went on, I formed great relationships with staff. Different staff related to me in different ways, and it felt very real. When I say different ways, all the staff with their individual personalities related to me, whether that be over supporting me in my daily life, food, over humour, activities, similar interests in TV shows or shopping. For example, one day I might try out a gym class with staff, another might watch all the Twilight movies in the evening when I'm home, another staff member would help me rearrange and clean my room. All these gestures and daily routines, activities made me feel really comfortable and at home, and building these relationships over time helped me to be more comfortable with the staff. If I ever felt something was going on for me or I needed advice, I felt like I could go to them. Another aspect of residential that I was worried about before moving in was I was worried about living with the other girls, but it actually wasn't as hard as I expected, as the staff helped me to cope with this and sort out any issues if there was any. I applied for college to do nursing while I was living in residential. I completed my PLC and was looking to do my nursing degree in England. I was actually a bit of a divil and slow to get myself organised with the application for college in England, but the staff didn't give up and they motivated me to complete my application and get ready for moving over. I also had an aftercare worker at the time, and there was a lot of work that went on in the background to help me get organised and move over. I was honestly so lucky to have this support at that age, and even now I don't think I could manage to do this without them. They actually did so much, they were brilliant. The staff and my aftercare worker and all involved were fantastic and very supportive. One good part of being in residential is that everyone in the team brings something different. I used to look forward to different staff coming on as I would relate to them in different ways. Also, when I moved to England to study, I wasn't cut off by staff. 2 staff who I was really close to helped me move over with the plan to help me get my bits and set up my bedroom. I was actually really emotional when it came to the time that they had to leave. I started crying, saying, "Don't go." Even though they had to leave, I could see they cared, and they rang me when they got back to Ireland to check in. Also, when I was in England, staff rang me and visited me while I was away, and I'm still very close to some of the staff and will pop in and meet for a coffee every now and then. And to be honest, I'd still be lost without them now, as they still guide me and give me advice when I need it. I suppose you hear a lot, and I even hear in my own job because I work in the health and social care sector, the impression of working in residential care has been really negative, but that's not the case in my experience, having lived there, and I got a lot from it. I actually loved living in Ballygallen. It was my favourite place I've ever lived during my time in care. I used to joke in my early 20s with the staff, asking them to get me a little cabin out the back for me to move back into. If I was to give some advice to people thinking about becoming a social care worker in residential, I would say do it. It's very rewarding. I would say to bring your own personality into it and try not to be too formal. It's important to know the young people's likes, dislikes, morals, culture, and their personality. In general, it can take longer or more time to get to know some people more than others, so just to give young people time. Also, even after some time, to remember that all people take time to click with others, and that different young people might get on with other staff members more than others, and this isn't personal, and vice versa, another young person might get on better with you rather than others. I suppose it's like any of us forming relationships with one another. I can give you an example. In my case, there was a staff member who I didn't take to at all when I moved into Ballygall. I found her very serious and strict as a young person, and after a year and a half of living in residential, this staff member was supporting me to go for my nursing interview in England, and I wasn't very happy at all when I found out she was coming with me. On this trip, I ended up learning a lot about the staff member and began to understand that her being serious at times was out of care, preparing me for my future. We actually had very similar interests too. We had a really nice time. This staff member turned out to be one of my favourite people and still is to this day. So I guess I'm going to finish off by saying a special thank you to Katrina, the girls in Ballygall, and Tusla Aftercare for making my experience so positive.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks very much for that unique insight. It's great to have the experience of people who have experienced care and to speak so fondly about the residential staff who really kind of work with them. We're going to have a break at the moment, and we're going to come back in about 15, 20 minutes' time, where we will have a panel discussion which you then can sort of put questions to members of the panel. So listen, thanks very much, and we'll see you in 20 minutes. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much. If we could just we'll just call everyone back. That was a long 15 minutes, but however, we are just going to have a panel discussion. I'm sure you have lots of questions following the presentations from our presenters. Katrina is here on my left with the roving mic. Please wait until the mic comes to you, otherwise people may not fully hear your questions. So, does anyone have a question? Thanks. Otherwise, I'll start calling names.
Thanks to everyone. I just think it was really, really interesting. I have a group of second years back there, and they're all smiling and saying how much they learned, and that's a gift. Like, that's very rare as well, just saying. My question is, I know for the people who are in practice, is sometimes, there's a lot of talk about relationship building and doing, but sometimes is it the stuff you don't do or not talking? Is that part of the role as well? Sometimes the students feel like they have to know all the answers, know what to say, and constantly be doing things. So it's more for the practice people, it's up to yourself.
Is that on? I suppose for myself, from coming from an intellectual disability background as well, I worked with a lot of young people that were nonverbal. So, yeah, I think you have to, building the relationship is learning to wait as well, and there's many ways to communicate without speaking to them. Like, you don't need to go and ask them 100 questions, because that does overwhelm young people. And they can find it invasive or whatever. But even if it's just sitting in the sitting room and you're watching a movie and something might pop up that you have in common with them, and that's kind of how you do start building the relationship. You're not going in and asking, so what's your background? Like, that's not realistic. But yeah, there's many different ways, like your body language and everything like that. Like, that shows kind of whether you're interested in someone or whether you're not. So, like, don't feel pressure, I suppose, to be pushing the relationship. They will come to you when they're ready. And if they know you have a genuine interest and you're asking questions that might just be little kind of, I suppose, icebreakers, they'll pick up on that. Well, that's my point of view anyway.
Sorry, if we could just turn it on. Is it on now? I don't think so.
Oh, sorry, there you go. The other thing I think we have to remember is that, well, we mightn't think we're in relationship with young people. We are, just by the very fact that you're there and they're watching everything you do. So while you mightn't be maybe the flavour of the month or the one that's getting asked to go on the trips or this, that and the other and all that sort of stuff, they're still watching out to see how you carry yourself in the day. Are you making the environment a nice one? Are you sort of been proactive in sort of making the place run smoothly? And that tells. They know young people are hyper vigilant. They've had to learn to be, they've had to assess threat, and sometimes that radar misfires a little bit too as well. But they're watching to see, are you genuinely here to make this a nice place for me, or are you here just to get through to the end of your shift and pick your paycheck? And like that as well, we also have to remember as well in the relationship building, like I said, we bring ourselves. So if people have a genuine interest in something as well, to bring that with them, because when we have enthusiasm and love of something as well, the young people will feed off that. So there's sometimes being in the relationship can be the tricky thing as well, because you might be the one getting love bombed and going, no, I'm only talking to him today, or I'm only talking to her today, and all that sort of stuff. But like that, if you're the staff member who isn't in that position, well, what can I be doing to support them in that day? What can I be doing to make this shift run smoothly, so that the group and that the house is, feeling as nice as it can? So,
okay. Is there another question? Just over here.
Kind of, as yourself as like social care practitioners, do you think that it's very important to kind of go into all avenues of social care, kind of like disability, addiction services and residential before you kind of would finalise maybe going into residential, or would you kind of recommend doing maybe your year 3 placement in residential care?
Who'd like to answer that?
I think for my college anyway, I don't know if you are the same here, for our placements we didn't get to choose our placements, so our practitioner kind of allocated them to us. And I think because there's such a huge variety like in social care, that it is important to try a few of them. Don't just think that you have your mind set on something and that's what I'm going to like, because you could go in and absolutely go, oh my god, this is not for me. And when you have your mind set on something, it's very difficult then to move. I suppose, yeah, because when I went into intellectual disability, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I kind of was always into mainstream, but then when I went into it, I was there for 3 years, like, and I loved it. So it just depends. I think it is important to try different things, because there's always loads of other avenues to go down if you're not happy in one.
Just to touch on what Casey said as well there, I know for myself, I suppose my first placement that I did it in Family Resource Centre, and it was a shorter placement, but I knew, look, that's not for me. So I know like there is such an emphasis on residential. Like I would definitely think it's one of those sectors of social care that you will get your most experience from, and it'll set the foundations for you. But it is also important to explore other factors. You know, like I know for me, like Casey said, she done intellectual disabilities, like that would have no interest to me, that part of social care. I kind of want to work with younger people. So you kind of know yourself what area you want to go into. But definitely if like addiction or homeless is more of an area of interest to you, then go into your placement in that area, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to find out whether you like it or not. And then if not, you can try somewhere else.
So is there another question? We've two, just, oh, three.
Hi, Caroline Gray from Ashdale Care. It emerged a couple of times across most of the speakers this morning that there's a negative, I suppose sometimes people have a negative idea of what residential care is, and I wonder across this forum of voluntary, private and statutory providers, what we can do to influence that maybe negative reputation that people feel it mightn't be an attractive place to work. Because for me, listening to all of you, it's a really attractive, there's really positive things about working in residential care. So what can we do to influence that in the public domain?
I'll start. I think there is a negative perception because I suppose if you're Joe Public walking down the road, sometimes our young people don't necessarily put their best side out, and people don't know their backstory. And again, people are very sort of busy with their own lives and their own challenges. I think we've all heard the statement, well, sure, I didn't have it easy and all this sort of stuff, but you don't see me doing X, Y, or Z and all this sort of stuff. But the truth of it is that for most people, they didn't have the start that our young people have. They haven't had the challenges that they've had to face, not even close. And maybe we need to maybe help the general public understand a little bit more the challenges that are faced by young people in care. Not being at home with a family member on a daily basis is, you know, it's a fundamental right really, and it should be for all young people. And our young people, unfortunately, have to survive every day without that. And again, they have these people coming into their lives as well-intentioned as we are, strangers to them and all that sort of stuff. So I do think maybe we could help try to, as a society, understand a little bit more what is it like for these young people to have to grow up in this sort of situation that's so different, so alien to all their peers.
I remember, it's a long time ago now, being at a Christmas do with the staff from where I worked, and in St. Michael's and Finglas, and we were part of there were a number of groups there. There was 10 or 15 groups in a huge place. And there was an MC, and he went around all the groups and introduced them and said a round of applause for this group and that group or whatever. There were some business groups there. And then he said, and over here we have St. Michael's, a big welcome for the paedophiles, please. Now, we should have got up and walked out, I suppose. It's easy to say that in hindsight, but even that was probably 30 years ago, and it showed you even then. Now, there was a lot of emerging stuff around that time. I would say, to answer your question, I would say get involved with your professional association. Social Care Ireland get involved with CRAVA, because they try in their own way, and it's difficult at times, to project the kind of image that you suggest should be there.
I think Teresa.
I think as well a lot of the view and perception around residential care is historical. When you go back, there was always kind of a political sense of apathy towards children in care, and in turn then professionals that worked in the area. So I think we never ever broke away from there's lots of people, Ona Sullivan, Nicola Carr, write about children in care being considered second-class citizens. And I think that's where the crux of it is what Anthony was saying there. You know, is if we ourselves, because we're you know, it's a challenging aspect of the residential social care worker in terms of confidentiality and loyalty and you know, how we adhere to our work practices. We're not open about what we do because of the confidentiality and everything with that. But if it's, I mean, what Kate said this morning, if we could start promoting that whole, you know, new culture that we're looking at, that culture of recognition, promoting ourselves and valuing ourselves, I think we will elevate then that status or that political apathy that sometimes is there for children that are in care. And I think today is a start to do that, to say, you know, we are professional and we have to be the advocates for children in care, because, as Anthony said, sometimes they don't portray the best image. So I think it's about us as academics and residential workers coming together for, you know, days like this, or papers or research, or writing to local papers, or doing small things in a way that highlights the unfairness of it.
I think as well, just in general conversation as well, I know I'd working in the health and social care sector as well, I'd end up in conversations with people and they'd say, oh God, yeah, I was working, do you know, they kind of have this perception that kids in care are very troubled and very a certain way, like a certain stereotype nearly. And like, I'm kind of looking at them as well, they'd like, obviously they wouldn't know that I, you know, have that experience in care, and I've lived in care since I was 8. So I kind of then, I'm quite open now, like I would never have been as open when I was younger. I was very embarrassed that I was in care. So I'd say in the last few years, I don't really mind sharing with anyone really, do you know, it's nothing to kind of be ashamed of, but I feel like there is maybe some work with kids that are younger that it isn't something to be ashamed of, and like, I think it is that stereotype that makes you think, oh God, and I'm in this setting and this is what people's views are, rather than I actually really loved the house that I lived in. Do you know, that the other way wasn't about that, it was about what people thought. And I think as a teenager and as a young person growing up, you kind of, you know yourself, you're worried about what everyone thinks about you anyway, like in school and everything like that. So I think maybe doing work with young people and in society as well, changing that, you know, image and stereotype in general conversation, that would help a good bit, personally, I think.
Okay, we had Pat there.
Thanks, Mark. Firstly, can I just commend Tusla and CRAVA, you know, for starting this conversation here in this forum, and hopefully from this, as I say, you know, things will grow. But I suppose back in the old days, I'm long enough in the system now to know that residential was, you know, always compulsory part of placement. That's no longer the case in certain respects. But what I would say is, I suppose it behoves all of us as educators to make sure that we go and, you know, go away from here today and make sure that residential services and residential care are part and parcel of all our courses right across the sector. And I'd look forward, certainly, and it's interesting that this session is being recorded, that I'd advise all educators here to go back, link up with their e-techs, the techies and the whole lot, and make sure that today is on, you know, a platform, an online platform for access to students, as opposed to just going away today and saying, well, we had a great discussion up in Athlone last Monday. So can I just compliment everybody? I think this is the start of a bigger conversation, but I would urge all my colleagues across the sector to maybe link up with with Tusla and Crava to make sure that today and today's session is a learning resource for students to further promote children's residential services. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pat. On that, there was a question over here.
Yes, good afternoon. At this stage, following on from what Pat said there about a learning resource, I was thinking about, is there a way that we could bank or have a repository of all the creative and innovative ways that are being used, that are being utilised in residential care? We're coming from the therapeutic art and drama side, and I worked in residential care myself, so I know the impact of using innovative and creative ways for the young people to realise identity and relationships and self-esteem. And I suppose the question is maybe bank as a learning resource the innovative ways that people are working in.
And certainly this presentation is obviously being streamed live, but it will be available for anyone who wants us to review it. And the programme of events throughout the week are also going to be there, which will be available to other people. And they will be on the internet. So as you know, once it's on the internet, it's true and it'll stay there forever. So it will be available forever. But certainly that'll be something the Employers Forum will consider. There's a number of working groups which we are looking at, sort of trying to create those resources. Is there a question? Question over here. Yeah, let's go round. Let's go round the outside.
Hiya, how are you? The age range for residential care is, I would say, it's very fundamental in the development of the family unit. When you're a staff member and you're working with a young person or a child, how would you establish clear boundaries working with those children? Because they might see you as the family unit, while you might see them from a more professional point of view, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I suppose this is when I started in Glensilva. This was kind of an experience I had with a young person. We would kind of work together as a community, so we would try to, as much as we can, make it like a family unit. I know, as much as we can. So we'd sit and have our meals together. We'd sit and have our dinners together. We want to give them normal experience as well, like as them know, and obviously that we're not their family, but they're able to do them normal experiences that normal families would do. And then I suppose as well, when your boundaries, in the sense of boundaries, when you develop a relationship for long enough that you can just say hug young people or do stuff like that. Like there's obviously, you're not going to go in your first day and start hugging all the kids in the house. Like that's not very appropriate. So when you have that relationship, you can say to them, look, I don't know if we're ready like at that stage yet, or whatever it is. Like be honest with them about it and say, but maybe in a couple of weeks. We do a thing called Lights in Glensilva, which is really good. It's a thing at the end of the evening where you settle a young person to bed, and it's 30 minutes, and it's up to them if they want to have it or not. So we don't obviously say, come on, we'll go for lights. They ask us for, and that depends. It's kind of unconditional positive regard. That depends. Like it doesn't, no matter what type of day they've had, we'll still settle them to bed and spend a few minutes with them chatting or doing whatever they want to do. But obviously when you first come into residential and you start working, you're not going to do that straight away. Like it'll take a while for that to develop until you're able to do that. But like I just say to a young person, he had asked me one of my first days, and I knew that for them you have to learn that that's not how a relationship naturally develops. Like you don't straight away go up and start, hugging them and spending special time with them and stuff like that. So I just said to him, look, we don't know each other that well lately, but I can't wait to do that with you. Do you know what I mean? So you're not totally dismissing them, and you're saying that I'm looking forward to it in the future, but we have to wait till we get to know each other a little bit better. So I suppose that's a way to put in boundaries without dismissing them and making them feel rejected, I guess.
I think boundaries are obviously very, very important for us as adults, for children in general who are getting on well and are fairly normal, but they're certainly very important for children in care. And I think that may be one of the ways, and I'm sure each organisation and unit or centre have their own ways of doing this, but I think when a child appears at the door and you meet them and you're bringing them in and the team meets them, obviously, naturally your inclination is to be positive and to point out, not to say you're going to like it here, but you know what I'm saying. But I do think at another point it's important to say, some of the things that are not allowed are A, B, and C. Not 40 different things, but just maybe 2 or 3, and try to incorporate the main aspects of that. And I think children will know what you mean. They may not have experienced it at home or up to now, but I think setting down the boundary, setting it down, drawing the line, that line will be crossed. But if you set it down and you can refer back to it, and I think that might be just one way of setting boundaries.
Like that, there isn't a staff member, I'd say, who's worked any length of time that hasn't been told, you're not my ma, you're not my da, and we're not. But we are doing our best to sort of try to fill that sort of parent and family shaped hole. And, it happens in other ways that, the rules, we are the adults in the room, and we do need to remind that, and they are the children, and it's the adults' responsibilities to provide that safe, caring, nurturing environment for children. That's the job. So, we can sort of fill those roles, and the dynamics and the sort of feel and the tone of the relationship can sort of have, it can have a sense of it that's like a parent with a child, or like an uncle with a niece or nephew, and so on and so forth, and these things, but we're not. And we need to be respectful and honour that without sort of dishonouring the young people's original families, but at the same time acknowledge we are the adults that are here, and it is our job to take care of you, and we need to show the young people that we're going to do our best in a sort of safe and boundaries raised. And again, the boundaries need to be for the safety of the child, not for the comfort of the staff member, is the other side of it as well. If the boundaries and everything and your practices and your decisions are keeping the young person at the centre of it, I think young people will learn to trust that.
Okay, is there
Can I, Mark, just add one little thing? I'm a manager in residential, and around, there's loads of tools in residential to help you with boundaries. Supervision, your colleagues, linking in. When you start, you'll have a colleague who you'll be with a more experienced colleague. So there is loads of tools that you can always go and ask question. And was that okay how I handle that?
Okay, I'm just looking for a final question. Sorry, just behind you, Charlotte.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Charlotte, and I worked in Res Care as well for 20 years. I'm now the CPD coordinator with Social Care Ireland, and I suppose we've been touching on identity, and currently social care workers are going through the registration process with Corru. I know we have some Corru members here in the audience as well. So I just wanted to ask the panel around what's your views on this registration process around identity for social care workers?
I'll keep my answer short and sweet, move on. I think it's brilliant. It's long overdue, and I think everyone needs to really apply themselves to, I hear the uptake isn't what it should be at the moment, and I think we need to sort of double down, both as practitioners, students, educators, everyone, and get behind this and really sort of solidify what it is a social care worker does and define ourselves in a very, very clear way for people.
Yeah, I think, Charlotte, that the registration is important. There was a long battle for it and so on. We don't have to go back over past history. But I think we have to recognise that the 2005 Act, the Registration Act, is really about keeping the public safe. A lot of social care workers, and I myself, perhaps to some extent, was that way at the time, felt that this was somehow going to enhance our status. And it may well, I think it's excuse me, it may well do that, and I hope it does. And I think the fact that a social care worker, and it will be a protected title and is a protected title now, that a social care worker can say, yeah, I am a registered social care worker, it will be, I suppose status can be a dirty word, but it's an important word sometimes. And if, as you were saying there yourself, about the whole thing of the second-class citizenship, I think, Teresa, that's true, but I think this does raise it, and I think it's good all round, and obviously everybody would encourage people to get the thing going for themselves and so on. There is a certain aspect of that will be onerous and so on, but look, what else isn't? Every job has that.
Anyone else like that? Anything to raise?
Sorry, there's a car parked and they're afraid it's going to be clamped, so I just need to give out the reg. 202WX201, if that's anyone's car. Can they please go move it?
Okay, nobody running yet. Oh. Right, Teresa.
Yeah, I think, Charlotte, our hope in I suppose, the education settings that it will enhance service provision, that there will be more resources allocated, more funding. And I think from the students' point of view, they're now coming in, and we tell them that in first year, you're now coming into the profession at a very good time because you can register straight from the programme. So like Anthony, and like everything though, the process to get to where we were as registered, approved programs was challenging and difficult. Anything worth fighting or getting, and now that we have it, we're very pleased. But again, we think that there will be, and we already see some very positive benefits from it. And I agree with what Anthony said, that we all have to get behind it and register. And I think that maybe will answer the earlier question, because we're saying to work with young people in care. It's not just anybody can do this job. We're specialised, that your needs are so important that students go to college for 3 to 4 years to build relationships with you, because that's what you deserve. Like a qualified doctor deals with sick people. You don't take someone in off the street to take your tonsils out. So that's the whole, our whole philosophy.
Just as a student, I suppose I was in second year whenever Cora came in, and our whole course modules, the topics had all changed, and everything was based around the standards of proficiencies, and they have been, drilled down our necks from the minute that came in. But even on placement, we had our proficiency record, and we had so many proficiencies, and we had to give 3 examples on our placement of how we met that proficiency. And even as a student, I find that so beneficial even on my placement, because you could look back and say, right, okay, well, I understand what safety and quality is. I understand child-centred care. I really feel from Cora who has come in, it's more beneficial for students, and especially now coming out of the course, you're definitely more knowledgeable, and you feel more ready going into the field of social care. So I definitely think that Cora has been brilliant for the college.
That's great. We'll just kind of finish the panel discussion now, and I'd just like to thank each and every one of the panel members for their insights, and for you, the audience, just about your questions. So we're just going to move on to our next part, which is the awards. So thanks very much.
Okay, everybody, I'd just like to welcome everybody to the awards segment of our opening ceremony for Social Care Workers Awareness Week. As a group in the Children's Residential Employers Forum, when we were thinking about this week, we were trying to come up with ways of how I suppose we could recognise and celebrate residential social care workers across Ireland. And we couldn't think of a better way of doing that, and recognising the outstanding achievements and value of social care workers that go above and beyond in their roles to support young people than having this award ceremony. The judging panel, I suppose we made it up across the 3 different sectors. So David Power, the Director of Services from Smiley's Trust, was representing the voluntary sector. John Fox, who's the Professional Support Manager within Tusla, was representing the statutory sector. And I myself, Debbie Vaughan, the Compliance Manager in Pathways Ireland, was representing the private sector. We got an awful lot of nominations in, and it was a tremendous response, I suppose, for the very first award ceremony that we're having. And it really showed the fantastic work that was being done across residential care in Ireland. Every nomination, I suppose, noted that sense of family and home that's being created, and I think everybody has spoken about that today. But when we were reviewing the nomination forms, that's something that came across so strongly. That teams that were creating a sense of home, that homely environments that was so important to provide young people with safe care. And I just wanted to note that because, it's a common theme that we've heard across everybody speaking today. So the guys that are receiving the awards today, I suppose they really demonstrated how they've gone above and beyond for the young people and are committed in their support to the young people living in residential care. We were very lucky, I suppose, to have a couple of very generous sponsors that really helped to get this award ceremony going, and without them we wouldn't have been able to do it. So I'd like to thank Pathways Ireland, who sponsored the Second Year Student Awards, Ashdale Care, who sponsored the Third Year Student Awards, and Tusla, who have sponsored 3 awards for us, which are the Individual, the Team and the Lifetime Achievement Awards. Okay, so we'll start off with our Students' Awards. So the Second and Third Year Students' Awards aim to recognise students that have successfully completed a placement in children's residential services and performed to an excellent standard in their ability to develop relationships with the young people and the teams that they were working in, and the ability then to integrate their theory into practice as well. So both students that are receiving the awards today were nominated by their college lecturers, placement coordinators. The second year student completed her placement in Tusla, and she's described as being innovative in her use of theory and practice, while also considering risk and privacy issues that may arise. She's demonstrated her ability to build relationships with the young people and displayed a genuine interest in their lives through engaging in activities with them. As a second year student, and I think again this has been touched on an awful lot today, she was able to understand when young people were testing the boundaries, but she was able to explain and talk to the young people about those boundaries in a very respectful manner that helped her to develop trust and relationships. She fully participated in the team meetings and was confident in expressing her own observations as her confidence grew throughout her placements. Reflective practice was named as a particular strength, and she could identify areas that she was finding difficult in placement, but she sought the support that she needed to work through them, and she engaged in regular self-care practices. So I'd like to welcome Helena Fortune, Operations Manager for Pathways Ireland, to present the award for the Best Second Year Student Placement to Laurie Brown of TUS Midwest. Okay, our next award is our Third Year Students Awards. And the third year student that was nominated, she completed her placement with Daffodil Care, and she showed innovation and interventions through the application of theory into practice with particular focus on person-centred and strengths-based approach. She played a key role in developing the morning routines of young people, which supported service delivery throughout. Through the use and understanding of emotional expression, she was able to develop trust and relationships with the young people and was very confident in building and maintaining boundaries through the use of her interpersonal skills, which we all know are so important for social care workers. Her placement supervisor highlighted her ability to apply interdisciplinary insights and to initiate critical discussions within the team. She excelled in the area of self-care and self-awareness and could recognise the emotional impact of working within residential care through her engagement in reflective practice. So we're very happy to welcome Caroline Gray, the CEO of Ashdale Care, to present the award for the Best Third Year Student Placement to Emer Lyons from C2 Carlow. Okay, our individual award then, as we move on to social care workers, aim to recognise and reward an individual working in children's residential services that has made an outstanding and valuable contribution to children living in care and children's residential services as a whole. The award was based on this individual going above and beyond their everyday role to provide excellence in care, leadership and inspiration to their colleagues. The person who received this award was nominated by a team of social care managers and deputy managers and has worked in residential care for more than 30 years, dedicating a significant portion of their career to the needs of children in care. The person was chosen for this award due to their ability to motivate and inspire teams, their level of commitment to Tusla and previously HSE residential care services, their proactive decision making that was recognisant of and addressed the needs of the young people. She placed the voice of the young people at the centre of all decisions and has been known to be a very strong advocate for all young people. In addition, and as we talked about again, that really sense of homely environment, she was a key person in the role of the renovation of services to support a homely, comfortable and safe environment for young people living in care. She's described by her team as a person who embodies creativity, innovation, and unfortunately she couldn't actually make it today. But listen, we're really happy, I suppose, to welcome Dr. Don Fowler, the Dean of the school, to the stage to award the Individual Social Care Worker Award to Amanda Behersel on behalf of Bernie Fitzgerald. The next award then is the Team Awards. And the Team Awards aim to recognise the team working in residential care that have provided valuable support to young people and are exceptional in areas such as their performance as a team, communication, role modelling and overcoming quite significant challenges. The team receiving this award were nominated by the management team within their centre, and collectively they have over 200 years of experience for working in residential care. The majority of the team has worked in the centre for a significant period of time, which again in residential care is a little bit outside of the norm. So this really helped to support consistency for the young people and positive mentorship then for new team members that were coming in to join the team to help them to integrate. The support provided by the team to the young people was evident as the young people still come back to the centre to visit the staff because they've been able to create that sense of home and that second family that we strive to achieve. The management team described them as a selfless, innovative, committed and loyal team that has persevered in the face of the many challenges working in residential care. The team also brings a sense of family to residential care and prided themselves on building relationships with families and the local community so that an inclusive approach to care was adopted. The team are known for their eagerness to support new projects and have been central to the development of Tusla's policies and procedures and the delivery and implementation of the Well 3 model of care. And that's included a key worker resource pack that they developed to support services across Tusla. So I'd like to welcome William O'Rourke, the National Director of CRS in Tusla, to the stage to present the team award to the Castlefield Woods team. Our final award then, which is a very special award, especially considering this is the first time that we've had this award as part of the Employers Forum. It's the Lifetime Achievement Award, and it's to honour an individual who has made profound and lasting contribution to residential children's services through their use of creativity, innovation, support, leadership and responsiveness to the needs of the service. The person receiving this award has more than 30 years' experience working with children and young people in alternative care, beginning her career as a foster carer before moving on to become a social care worker. She's shown unwavering commitment to improving the lives of young people in residential care with her unique insight into the needs of vulnerable young people and has always strived to create better opportunities for them. In the early 2000s, she focused on working with young females who have suffered trauma, including child sexual exploitation. Her work in this area really did lay the foundation for her dedication to creating safe, supportive environments where young people could heal and thrive. In 2013, then, she went on to move to a smaller care home, where her ability to adapt to the changing needs of children set her apart as a leader in fostering safe spaces for youth and to grow and learn new skills to reach their potential. Her natural leadership skills propelled her into a management role, where she used a very hands-on approach to mentoring and supporting her team, ensuring that her vision of prioritising education for young people was achieved. Even during very challenging times, such as the pandemic, she tirelessly worked with multidisciplinary teams to ensure that the care and educational needs of young people were met, particularly those that were transitioning into independent living. She has supported and cultivated a loyal and resilient team that remain committed even through very, very traumatic events, including the death of a young person in their care. During this time, she provided crucial role modelling, teaching both staff and young people how to navigate grief, while also focusing on them having a future success. Her role has since evolved into training, where she leverages her extensive experience to coach new and existing managers. In this capacity, she continues to shape the organisation by fostering a culture that champions the voice of young people, enhances staff relationships, and encourages educational attainment. Her enduring dedication and lived experiences continue to inspire and guide social care workers to provide exceptional care to young people as they help rebuild lives and transform residential care. So I'd like to welcome Kate Duggan, CEO of Tusla, to the stage to present the Lifetime Achievement Award to Valerie Johnson of Ashdale Care.
Okay, we'd like to thank everybody. This is kind of brings us to a close of today's proceedings. But if I could just sort of remind everybody that we've a week-long event. This is an awareness week, and there is an online program of events, which tomorrow we'll be focusing on self-care and well-being. On Wednesday, we'll be looking at alternative and creative approaches. Thursday, we're looking at theory into practice, and we have a kind of a closing online event on Friday. And I would like to thank particularly the presenters who are going to present over those forthcoming days, and thank them for their efforts on it. This will all be online, and you will get access through www.tusla.ie/CRS/. It's on your program there. Please tune into those events. Please, look at them, and please encourage others to look at them also. We're also looking to sort of encourage individual residential units to hold their own individual events. I know there's, coffee mornings have already happened to highlight the kind of awareness week and raise awareness of residential care. And I think, certainly some of the questions to the panel was very much around that. It's about sort of trying to raise awareness. How do we raise awareness? How do we, create a good culture and good profile? It's about raising the awareness in our individual units. Bringing back the message that, residential care is incredibly important, but the practice deployed by residential social care staff makes a difference, and it's hugely important in the young people's lives that we deal with. So I encourage us all to do that. And if you can send your photos into us, we will sort of kind of have, hopefully at the end of it, we will have a sort of collage of events that have occurred within our residential centres. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. We have lunch in I think it's in the main canteen. For those of you who may not have got tickets, I think Katrina is going to go to the back there to hand out tickets for lunch vouchers. Otherwise, I'd like to thank everybody for coming along, and I would also like just the members of the Employers Forum just to come down on stage here, and we'll just get a final photograph from those people. So thanks very much for your day.